Good evening. Welcome to Vibin with Ashley Live. I'm your host, Ashley Live. This is episode 175 of my show. I am celebrating a massive milestone tonight, and no one else better to do it with me than the incredible powerhouse entrepreneur, Hala Taha. So Hala Taha is my guest tonight. She's a podcast princess. She is the CEO of Yap Media, as well as the host of her own podcast, Young and Profiting. So her podcast has done extremely well over the past several years, and it has been the #1 ranking podcast in the education sector. So she has had guests on her show like Deepak Chopra, Matthew McConaughey, Matt Higgins, and countless others. I am truly inspired by Hala, and I'm so very honored that she's coming on my show to chat with me this evening. So guys, how we doing? How we living? Hey Simon, how are you? Hello. Good evening. Hala is in the house. Hala, whenever you're ready, come on in.
Am I better this time?
Yes! You're better. You're better.
Sorry, I'm like a podcast princess, but when it comes to IG Live, I'm like an IG Live noob. So sorry about that.
I know you are the podcast princess, and yeah, when you said I'm not really that familiar with how to get on IG Live, I was like, no, it's okay. I got you, girl. But Hala, thank you for coming on my show and choosing to spend your time with me for just a little bit of time, because I am a huge fan of everything that you're doing with Yap Media, Young and Profiting, and I just want to applaud you as another woman in media. I just admire everything about what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Ashley. You're so sweet. I'm excited for this conversation. You look like you're super prepared, and I can't wait.
Yes. Okay, so I want to start at the very beginning of your life. What were you like as a child?
Oh my gosh. As a kid, I was this little hustler entrepreneur. I have been since I was a little girl. So I was a girl that was like setting up shop in the park, getting my friends to make bracelets so I could sell them, creating slushy stands, having every odd job you can think of. I was shampooing hair when I was 13, gift wrapping. I probably had like jobs by the time I was in college. So I always loved to work, had an entrepreneurial spirit, and it's a big joke with my family that I used to sing before I spoke. So I loved to perform and was very outgoing, and that was kind of like what I was like when I was a kid.
I love that, because the entrepreneur in you started at such a young age, and you just had your hands in everything, and this is just like what you were meant to do from a very young age.
Oh, 100%. I feel like I was born to be an entrepreneur. I feel like I've taken many different roads and paths, but it always led me back to leading a team, being a team leader, and being an entrepreneur.
Love it. So I want to talk about in college when you had the opportunity to work with Angie Martinez at the legendary Hot 97 in New York. For those of you who are not familiar with Hot 97, it's an amazing station in the New York City area, and Hala actually had the opportunity to work with Angie. So looking back on your start in radio, talk to me about that time in your life.
Sure. So when I was 19 years old, I got an internship at Hot 97, and I did a great job. They ended up promoting me to be Angie Martinez's intern, and it was like this coveted internship, and I was center of it all. So I remember going to work, and I'd meet every celebrity you could think of: J-Lo, Kim Kardashian, Jay-Z, Kanye West, you name it. I was like right in the middle of all the action. I'd be responsible to prepare the show briefs, to do the research. And that's really when I first fell in love with radio. And I ended up dropping out of school for almost 2 years to take on this opportunity every single day and basically to work at Hot 97. But the thing is that I was never paid. I was an unpaid intern for 3 years, and I worked at that station, and that included even going in on the weekends or going in at night. And I would make my money hosting showcases and concerts, and on the side I would have the precursor to what podcasts are, online radio shows. And so I had several online radio shows with the up and coming DJs. Many of them are super famous now, but I loved my time at Hot 97. I had such great experiences, and that's when I first fell in love with radio and broadcasting, and I feel like one of the reasons why I'm a successful podcaster today.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So then you had your own blog, entertainment blog on the side that did very well, and you were going to concerts and doing your own interviews. So I want to talk about the importance of music in your life, because you're around Angie, then you'd have this entertainment news blog, and then you're leading a team of 50 bloggers. So what's the impact that music and radio specifically had on your time during that time?
Yeah, 100%. Nobody has ever asked me the question of like, why music? When I was younger, music was a huge part of my life. Like, I literally thought that I was going to be a famous singer, especially when I was like in college and started to kind of release some of the limiting beliefs that I had. I got really into the law of attraction, and I truly believed that life was limitless. And I always wanted to use my voice to impact the world. And at the time, I thought that meant singing. I thought it meant singer, I should write music, put out my own songs, and I really loved it. But to be honest, it didn't come that naturally. Like, it was really hard for me to write music. I had a really great voice. I felt like it was going to be an uphill battle becoming a singer. And then when I got introduced with radio, I realized that this outcome that I wanted to use my voice to better the world, I could do it in other means, whether that meant writing blogs and having a blog site, whether that meant having a podcast or, you know, having a business show. And so I feel like I've evolved in terms of how I accomplished that goal, but the goal has always remained the same. And so I credit music, radio for helping me realize that there's other avenues towards success and not just like one path towards becoming successful.
Totally. And so what was the music that you were listening to during that time? Like, what was on your playlist? Like, what were you like rocking out to during that time?
Well, during that time, I feel like Drake was just like popping off. So this was like
Yeah.
when I got Hala Taha, that was like in like 2010, 2011. So it was like Drake, Trey Songz, Chris Brown, Rihanna. Those are all the songs I love. And I really did love hip hop, especially like new age hip hop. I was never like an old school hip hop type of girl, but I till this day, hip hop music. And I've gone into EDM. The music that I used to sing and write was more kind of sounded like Jewel, a mix between like Rihanna and Jewel. It was like sort of R&B, but folk at the same time. It's kind of hard to explain. So I kind of like Lana Del Rey, I feel like was the type of music that I used to sing. But yeah, it's been a huge part of my life. I feel very inspired by music.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you said singing and music was a huge part of your life, because I personally did not know that until you posted a video a couple of weeks ago on social media singing. And I was like, whoa, wait, Hala can sing too?
I know. I feel like it's definitely an avenue that I could have taken. And sometimes I wonder, like, wow, what if I just had really pursued that and stuck with it? But I'm really thankful that I didn't, because I feel like it's so brutal. You know, you've got to be a good dancer, all these things. I have a great voice, but I wouldn't say I'm like Beyonce status dancer. And I feel like if you don't have both, you can't make it.
Yeah. So what is your go-to karaoke song?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I recently had to go to karaoke bars and I was like researching this. Sing Mariah Carey. So like I'll usually go for like a Mariah Carey song or even Alicia Keys. Like I love to sing her songs too.
Yeah, I love that. I really had no idea that you were into singing and music like that, because I followed your podcast journey. I was like, yeah, she's such a great interviewer and she has all these entrepreneurs and amazing people on her show. And I'm like, whoa, wait, but music is actually a big part of your life as well.
100%. I mean, I feel like that was my first love. And Young and Profiting is the first show that I had that related. I had 5 or 6 shows before that, and they were all music related. I like Soldier Boy, Fabulous. You know, I dated Chris Brown in my 20s. Like he was my actual like boyfriend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's like I definitely have had a lot of music influence in my life.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. So then you left the entertainment business to get your master's. So talk to me about making that decision, because, right, like you had the Angie Martinez thing, you have this entertainment blog, and then you're like, oh, I want to get my master's. So what made you want to go back to school?
Well, really, it was rejection, right? So I kind of alluded to the fact that when I was in college, I learned about the law of attraction and I believed that life is limitless. And when I was 19, I got like one incredible thing after the other. Like I got a job at Hot 97, which was really cool at that age. But not only that, I became like the assistant of the biggest radio personality at the station, at the biggest show in America. And so everybody knew me as Hala from Hot 97, and people used to be very like curious, like how the heck did you get that? And really it was just because I had this like limitless abundance mindset. Then I started this blog, And that was also off the heels of rejection. I got fired from Hot 97. We didn't talk about that, but I got fired as an unpaid, like fired in quotes. I was let go because I asked for a minimum wage job. And I think, you know, it was decently illegal that they had me working there every day for free. And so they kind of cut their losses and were like, Hala just can't come to the station anymore. And I was devastated. Yeah. So that was one kind of layer of my naivety, like that was like removed, right? So like I got fired from Hot 97. I still kind of believed that life was limitless. So I started this crazy blog idea. It took off. MTV scouted us. They ended up shooting a pilot 3 months into it. We didn't get a show, but we didn't care, right? At that time, I was probably like 14 girls, very popular website. We learned how to hack Twitter, essentially, and got all the celebs to retweet us, and I had all these contacts. And so we would host the parties. Like, if you guys are from New York, DJ Camilo, Funkmaster Flex, I was on the flyer of all those parties in the city when I was like 25 to 27, you know? And so it was like rocking it. Yeah. And then he scouted us again, and they're like, hey, Hala, like, we're really serious. At the time, Love and Hip Hop was trying to get me on the show, and like I could have just like been on Love and Hip Hop or had my own show on MTV. And so I was like, I want my own show on MTV. Jersey Shore was just over, and they got us a studio on Broadway. They filmed us all summer. It was crazy. It was a great experience. We had like a concert and like filmed this dance, and it was like so extravagant. And then they pulled the plug like before they were going to air the show. And I was devastated. And for me, that was like the last straw, because it was basically 6 years of almost free work that I did in the entertainment industry. And so many like almost that like I kind of was just broken. And so it totally broke me. And I shut everything down. I actually, you know, we had this thing called the Sorority of Hip Hop, strawberryblunt.com. We were like kind of semi-famous in the tri-state area. Like if you were into hip hop in the tri-state area, you knew who the Strawberry Blunt Girls were. And we shut everything down. And at first it was supposed to be a joke. I was like, guys, I need like a 2-week break. Can we pretend we're going to shut down the blog site? Because we used to have to post every day, 10 times a day. And I was like, let's just pretend we're going to shut down. And so we did this whole like kind of like April Fool's joke, but it wasn't in April. It was around Halloween. And it was supposed to be this like PR move. And then I was just like, I don't want to start this again. And from then on, I was like, I can't take all this pressure of having all these girls. I felt like all their success was on my back, and I felt like I didn't want to have that kind of responsibility. I was a young lady. I wanted to have my own career, and I felt like I was holding myself back because I was trying to bring everybody with me, and I felt like I need to be successful on my own first before I can really have a team. I think I have more to learn, and I can't do this anymore. So I shut everything down, and I was like, I'm just going to go get my MBA, and that was my leg into corporate. So I got an MBA internship at Hewlett Packard, and then I worked corporate marketing, and then 4 years into it, I started Young and Profiting podcast.
Wow, that is crazy. You dealt with so much rejection in your career, and I think, and you said this before about rejection, how you're so good at taking it.
Yeah, I feel like I am really good at being rejected, and instead of like wallowing in my regrets or like what I did wrong and just like focusing on the past, I'm very future focusing. So usually what I do is I just think of a new challenge, new idea, and I channel all of my effort and energy into that. So I got let go of Hot 97 on a Thursday. By Sunday, I was learning how to code websites and building my blog site, Strawberry Blunt, and recruiting girls. 2 weeks later, I had 14 girls. 3 months later, we were one of the biggest websites in the hip hop and entertainment world at the time. And it was just because it was just very like taking that revenge and those feelings and channeling it in a different way that's positive. And I feel like I always do that every time I fail. I just immediately, I'm like, okay, what's the outcome that I actually wanted? How can I do it on my own? And how can I flip the energy here so that it's not negative energy and I'm just positively moving in the right direction?
Yeah, and I definitely think it's like, it's the universe's way of saying like, oh, maybe it's not for you right now, but take that energy, throw it into something else, and see if it sticks.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm. So then I want to talk about your time in corporate America. When you started Yap Media and Young and Profiting, like this was a side hustle during your corporate job. So talk about corporate America, your side hustle, and how you balance the two of those together.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I worked so hard during that time. It was just such hustling. So I started Profiting podcast 4.5 years ago. At the time, I was working a corporate job. And so it was just a podcast. One of the first things that I did is that I had a team from the very start. Funny enough, I didn't want a team. I had set out and been like, I want to do it on my own. I just had a huge team. I don't want to make the same mistakes again. I felt like I grew too big too fast with Strawberry Blunt. And so I thought I'm going to do it on my own. But the thing is that I had a really good show because I had all these skills related to podcasting. Most podcasters start and they have no skills. I had like 4 shows under my belt, interview experience, audio editing experience. My boyfriend at the time was like a famous music producer. So I had his team like audio editing my stuff. And so I had a really good show from the start. And so super fans would reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's where I started to grow my following. Instagram is I started to tackle just recently. And so I was always on LinkedIn first and grew my following there. And the listeners would reach out to me and be like, how can I help? Like, I'm so attracted to this. Even though I only had like 2,000 people listening to my episodes at the time, they were really engaged and active. And so like one guy from Estonia wanted to build my websites. Somebody from Atlanta wanted to learn how to do my videos. My business partner, Tim, started helping me with my graphics. And so by episode 8, like 2 months into it, I had 10 volunteers in a Slack channel helping me for free to grow Young and Profiting Podcast. And so I had a team from the start. So that helped, of course, because some of them were in different time zones. I was able to kind of like delegate. I could focus on doing really unique templates and really just moving the needle. So like from the very beginning, I was able to recruit a team to help me scale. And that was definitely one of the reasons why I was able to do it, you know, part-time as a side hustle for so long, even though I had a really big show and was like already interviewing big guests and things like that. So from the start, I had that definitely helped me with my time. But I just really was passionate about it. When you find something that you love and it doesn't feel like work, you just fit every single extra bit of time to try to move that thing along. And so I would do my interviews at lunch. Once I worked at Disney, I would have like a little routine where every day I would do my post of the day on LinkedIn to promote my podcast and just my personal brand in general on the train. I would do all of my engagement on the way back. I would be running into like closets and bathrooms. At the time, I had no video for my podcast. And I have to do these interviews based on guest schedule. So if it was at 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. or whatever, I would have to just try to do it anywhere I could at the offices at Disney. And so I would do that and just hustle. And I'd wake up super early. I'd sleep super late. Like I said, I had a boyfriend who was a music producer at the time, so he'd work nights. That enabled me to work all night on my show. And I just did 16-hour days for a really long time.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you've always been a hustler and you're always going to find a way to get what you want. And that's so very inspiring.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. So then you got to a point with this podcast that you said, hey, I am leaving Disney. I am doing this full time. So then talk to me about going into business for yourself full time. You don't have this corporate gig to fall back on. I believe it would be like the scariest thing ever, right?
100%, but I did it in a really safe way. So what I did is I grew Young and Profiting Podcast, and that was a really slow and steady growth. 2 years it's skyrocketed. It was like night and day. I basically reached out to all these different podcast players, every single podcast brand you could imagine. I leveraged my following. Everyone sponsored me. I got promoted in all the apps at the same time. I got on the cover of Podcast Magazine, and then everything blew up in terms of like my podcast following. With that, I got a lot of like notoriety. I became like the biggest podcaster on LinkedIn, and everyone started to know me as an influencer on LinkedIn. And the guests that would come on my show, they were all CEOs, best-selling authors. At the end of the show, they'd always ask me the same thing. Like it would, and I was so oblivious to it at first. They would always be like, Hala, like, how did you do this? Like, how are you so big on LinkedIn? And I'd be like, oh, I have interns and a volunteer team, and you know, just do side. I'm just giving back. And people would always kind of insinuate, like, can you do this for me? And I'd always say no. Like, I'm sorry, I can't do this for you. I don't have the time. I have a real job. You know, this is just for fun. This is just a hobby. And so I'd always kind of like negate it until one day I met this lady, Heather Monahan, who's my client for 2 years now. And she's a huge influencer on LinkedIn. She's a big author, very like, in the self-improvement space, she's very well known. And she like didn't take no for an answer. She's like, I want you to do my videos. I want you to manage my social. I've seen VaynerMedia's like back end. I've seen your back end. Your stuff is better. Like, I want to work with you. And so I took her on as my first experiment, and she really opened my eyes to be like, wow, like I have like a marketing agency on my hand. I already literally have employees. They just need to be paid now. And start getting clients, and I have a lead generation tool, my podcast, right? And so to this day, I don't do any cold outreach for my company. I'm not reaching out to people. It's the guests that come on my show that organically inquire about our agency. And we do social media, we do LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, podcast management, and we have a podcast network. So 2 years into it, I transformed just my podcast into more of a media agency and started leveraging my podcast as a tool to get clients for my agency. And then I was able to make money to reinvest and grow my podcast so that I could get sponsorships for my podcast and really grow it as like a huge enterprise of a show, the same way that Jordan Harbinger and Joe Rogan make a living off their podcast. Now my podcast is a business in itself because I've reinvested to grow in it, and I learned how to do media buying and stuff. And then I have my agency, and so it fuels both parts of the business, which is just really cool. And then I just launched a podcast network. So back to your question in terms of like, how did I transition to a side hustle? I did it really slow because I was a failed entrepreneur. You know, I didn't do well with strawberryblonde.com and the Sorority of Hip Hop. I couldn't monetize it. I couldn't afford to keep, to pay anyone a real salary. And I was just a young girl. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew how to build a brand. That was something that comes natural to me, right? So I knew how to like blow up on social, to hack a blog site. But in terms of actually real money, like I didn't figure it out. With the agency, I figured it out right away. And we made a lot of money right away. We just landed bigger deal after bigger deal. We had high ticket clients that it really just enabled me to like scale it and go all the way. So by the time I left Disney, it was 6 months into the business and I already had 30 employees. And that included people in the Philippines, India, and full-time US employees. And I'm talking about 30 full-time employees. And so my team is global. And I remember like working at Disney and, having to start my calls with my Philippines team and India team at 9 p.m. And that's when I would brief everybody from 9 to 11 p.m. And I did this for so long, where I would work all day at Disney, and then I'd have my little international team that would tell them what to do while I was at work the next day. And I did that over and over again until we just got so big. And I was like, hey, I can quit. I can pay myself a bigger salary than I had at Disney. And it's time to, spread my wings.
Yes, I love that. That is such a powerful story. So you mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk, and Gary posted something the other day on social. I wanted to just talk about it because I thought it was such a cool thing. So he had this video where he's saying how we need to take an hour of positivity in for our day. So he said, find 2 or 3 people, whether it's Gary, whether it's your best friend, whether it's, somebody else. So taking in 1 hour of positivity a day, who are people that you look to for that source of positivity, whether it's mentors, other influencers, friends, people in your staff?
Yeah, 100%. So I feel like the best thing about my business is I feel like I've gotten to go into business with my best friends. And these weren't friends that I had before the show. It's just that my business partners have become my best friends. So first of all, I think that's so much fun. I feel like so much fun of the entrepreneurship is the fact that you get to kind of pick your team and the people that you want to spend. Like, you spend so much of your life working. 1/3 of your life is at work. You want to spend it with people that you get to like handpick and enjoy, and you respect their work ethic. And so it's just so much fun building this empire with my team. So that's number 1. Number 2 is Jordan Harbinger. He's one of my mentors. He's one of the biggest podcasters in the world. And one of my favorite things to do is just nerd out with him and a bunch of other like big podcasters about growing our podcasts and how we can move the needle and talking about trends. And so like, that's also so much fun to like bounce around ideas with people who know more than me. You never want to be the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. So I love to surround myself with people who have strengths where I'm weak. And I feel like that's a really big part of, evolving and growing.
Yeah, I love what you said about you can't be the smartest person in the room, because then you're in the wrong room. And it's like, you need to surround yourself with people that can teach you things and help you learn. And, because we all have different strengths. And when you have a good circle of people around you, you're like, oh, well, you can help me with this, or maybe we can talk about this here. And I can only imagine the relationship you have with Jordan, just because you both are so successful, but you can both bounce ideas off each other.
100%. And I always say, like, one of the best networking tactics, especially when you're trying to dominate a niche, is to forget about and to just focus on collaboration. Because really all the other, like, especially in this creator space, there's so much pie for everyone. And no matter where you are, focusing your time in whatever industry or niche, you can team up with other people and learn from each other and collaborate with each other. And so one of the things that I like to do, and I'll give you an example of when I was starting with podcasting. So I had a goal of young professionals on LinkedIn. And so what I did is I started podcasting. Then other people started doing podcasts on LinkedIn. And there were some people who started at the same time as me. And instead of being, I never want to talk to those people, I hate those people, they're my competition, I was like, well, why don't I team up with them and be friends with them? And let's see what's working, what's not working, and let's all like rise together, right? And so I invited everybody to a WhatsApp chat. And I was like, hey, what's up, Hala? Like, I see you're crushing on LinkedIn, or I see you're trying to do your thing. I'm also trying to do similar things. Like, let's join a WhatsApp group. Let's support each other. Let's have a monthly mastermind call. And then you're the glue that brought everybody together. So not only did you start this group that's going to give you information and help you level up and learn more about you're also becoming an influencer within your niche. And so like I podcast influencer, and that was just like one way that I did it, but I've done that in so many different ways where now like a lot of the podcasters know who I am, and I've become an influencer within the podcast space. And the benefit for me is that I learn from all these other people, and then for everybody else is that I get to then pass down my learnings to everyone because I'm talking to so many other podcasters. So I feel like it's such a great strategy.
Yeah, and it's such a give and take too, because it's like you just never know who you're going to meet within the podcast space, and you all can learn from each other. And like, oh, that was a really good idea. Like, I didn't even think of it that way.
Yeah, or make intros, for example, like, oh, you had this guest on, could you intro me and I'll intro you to this guy who you wanted, and just level up together, like there's so much beauty in that.
Totally. Now, I love that your podcast, you're all about building value and creating value for the listeners. So how could people watching this interview right now build value for you, Hala?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for that question. I would say do yourself a favor and subscribe to Young and Profiting Podcast. I've had amazing guests. I've interviewed Matthew McConaughey, Deepak Chopra, Dave Asprey, Seth Godin, Ed Milet, Wim Hof, Patrick Bet-David, like so many great recent interviews. And I really take my time to do my research, just like Ashley does. You did a phenomenal job, Ashley. And just level up your life. It's just such a great show, and it's no fluff. You're going to learn so much every time you tune in.
Yeah, I mean, when I listen to my podcasts, or when I listen to your podcast, if you will, I go to your podcast because I'm just like, I just need a little pick me up. Like, Hala's going to do it for me. Like, whoever she's interviewing will just pick me up out of my funk. And so thank you so much for doing that for me, but for people all over the world.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course. So for the people watching right now that want to follow you in your journey, can you just plug all your socials for me?
Yeah, sure. So you guys can follow me here on Instagram at Yap with Hala. I'm always in my DMs. Let me know how you like this episode. You guys can also find me on LinkedIn. Just search for my name. It's Hala Taha. Also on YouTube, my YouTube channel is really starting to grow, and a lot of people are enjoying it. We do some really cool videos on there. So check out my YouTube. Just search Young and Profiting. Go to youngandprofiting.com if you can't remember any of this. And of course, you can find Young and Profiting podcast on your favorite podcast player.
Yes, guys, go check out Young and Profiting. Follow Hala. She has so much good content, and you're going to learn from every episode. Like, I kid you not, when I listen to the podcast, I actually write things down. I'm like, this is everything I learned from this podcast. And I have like a notebook full of things that I learned from you. And I'm just like, oh, I feel like I'm in like Hala University.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ashley. I appreciate that.
Of course. Hala, thank you so much for spending your evening with me. I'm so very grateful that you had the time to come on my show and share all your wisdom with my listeners. Guys, give Hala a follow here. Go on YouTube. She has amazing content on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. She is everywhere. And guys, if you don't already, make sure to follow me. I'm Ashley Live. This is Vibin with Ashley Live. And thank you so much, Hala, for celebrating episode 175 with me. I'm so very grateful.
Thanks, Ashley. Have a great night, everybody.
Of course. Have a great night, Hala. Bye-bye.